We've been beset by this. It's now normal, where once the media would have a tizzy over a fleeting glimpse of a swastika flag. I'm talking about the false flag stitch-up at the trucker convoy in Ottawa 2.5 years ago. Well, now they abide the same and worse all the time. They don't talk about it because it's not a trucker they're trying to smear. They're trying to protect new immigrants from the smear of anti-Semitism, but it's not a smear. They actually are. But as Sherlock Holmes would say, what about the dogs that didn't bark? Remember that story? There are no street protests like this in the Arab world. None. Not in the great Arab cities of Dubai, not in the key Arab country, Saudi Arabia. There are no Arab or Muslim countries in the world taking refugees from Gaza. The Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, says he actually doesn't care about the Palestinian issue. He has other things he cares about. Here's a story about that. The folly of bringing in Gazans as refugees is just on Canada and Australia. Other countries know better. Jordan, which is about 50% Palestinian demographically, they took Palestinians when Yasser Arafat was around. He started a civil war there that almost toppled the current king's father. Same thing happened in Syria. Same thing happened in Lebanon, both of which have succumbed. Israel can largely take care of itself, I'm glad to say. It was hamstrung in its reaction to the Gaza Hamas terrorist attacks by Joe Biden, by Anthony Blinken. All of the Western allies of Israel told it not to extirpate Hamas, but to have ceasefires and to go easy. But when Israel didn't listen to that in Lebanon, look at how effective it was. First, with the incredible move of blowing up Hezbollah pagers and walkie-talkies. The entire Hezbollah organizational chart was gone, especially with the huge bombing of the headquarters. Remember that extraordinary explosion?
זמן לפני המלחמה. תראה מה נהיה פה, אלוהים.
Now, when the head of Hezbollah, named Hassan Nasrallah, basically an Iranian puppet in Lebanon, who had killed thousands of Lebanese too, by the way, when he was assassinated, the Western leftists were in mourning. But in the region, there were celebrations. I'm not talking about Jews. I'm talking about Christians and Muslims in Lebanon, in Syria, even in Iran. They were cheering what Israel did. Because Hezbollah doesn't just kill Jews. They kill anyone that gets in their way, including thousands of Syrians and Lebanese. Oh, and by the way, hundreds of U.S. Marines and nearly 100 French soldiers too. But something interesting happened yesterday. I don't know if you saw it. It was actually sort of terrifying. Hundreds of ballistic missiles fell on Israel. They're much faster and harder to hit than the small rockets fired from southern Lebanon or Gaza. There were about 200 of these ballistic missiles that were fired. Incredibly, not one Israeli death, even though several of them did hit and created huge craters. Compare Iran's attack on Israel with these inaccurate, hugely explosive ballistic missiles with the ultra-precision attacks Israel used in Hezbollah, the pagers, the precision-guided missiles. Iran's approach is deliberately to kill as randomly as possible. That's where the terror comes from. Israel's approach is to avoid the civilians and get the terrorists. Obviously, Israel has never attacked Iran, the country. It just hasn't. But this was Iran's second unprovoked attack on Israel. The first was back in April, where, again, luckily they didn't kill anyone either. Now, how can Iran be so ineffective? I don't know if it's just they're a paper tiger or if this was some sort of just for show attack so they could look tough and keep some self-respect after having their proxy in Hezbollah smashed. Speaking of tough talk, there's been some very tough talk from a variety of Israeli cabinet ministers saying they were going to retaliate against Iran in a brutal way. Maybe, or maybe they're just huffing and puffing too. I don't quite know. I don't know if they'll do anything. I suspect that the United States has told them not to fight back at all, told Israel just to accept hundreds of missiles landing in their country without fighting back. In some ways, I'm actually more worried, though, about what's happening here at home. I see in the news 2 new command posts in the York region. That's the area outside Toronto. They're setting up command posts to protect the Jews. There's still command posts after October 7th at various Jewish schools in Toronto proper, but I don't think they actually stop anything. Everyone can see there's just a truck parked there. There's no one in them. It seems like it would be deterring the least motivated of terrorists, but it wouldn't stop someone who actually wants to follow through on the Hamas or the Hezbollah promise of killing the Jews. And there are those people amongst us. Like I said before, there are terrorism charges across this country on a regular basis now. It barely makes the headlines anymore. And those millions of immigrants we're bringing in, including the thousands from Gaza. Well, you heard Mark Miller, the affirmative action immigration minister, chosen simply because he was in Justin Trudeau's wedding party. He says he doesn't vet. That's the job for our police to catch the bad guys afterwards. Remember that?
Are accused in the Najjar killing were on student visas here in Canada?
I can't.
You cannot?
I can't. There's information I just can't share with you at this time. This is an ongoing police investigation, and those questions reside properly with the RCMP or Minister LeBlanc.
Generally speaking, if someone were on a student visa, would there be criminal record checks?
Yes.
There would be?
Yeah.
And then how does that process work?
You check them, and if they have a criminal record, they don't come in.
Okay. And then, okay.
Do those reports concern you, though?
I can't, obviously, they do, yes. But again, I can't speak to specifics, Olivia.
So you can't confirm or deny if they're on student visas?
No.
And you can't confirm or deny if they were still active or?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No. Okay. Thanks.
The fact that India's foreign minister responded to these arrests by saying they just show that Canada has been lax about who it lets into the country. What do you think of that response? How do you respond?
We're not lax, and the Indian foreign minister is entitled to his opinion.
What do you plan to do about this?
About what the Indian foreign minister said? I'm going to let him speak his mind. It's just not accurate.
And what about these reports? Is there anything the government's going to do to respond to this? I know you say you can't comment because it's
I can't.
RCMP, but like anything, is there anything at all that the government's going to do?
We
about
take any
this?
report like this very seriously.
Are you involved is your office involved in the investigation at all, providing information to RCMP?
We always cooperate with the RCMP.
Have you been asked to cooperate in this case?
We're always asked to cooperate, can't speak to specifics. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, I'm not calling for censorship of Canadian citizens, but I don't believe foreign citizens have the right to be racist, hateful, genocidal agitators in our country. I think if the roles were reversed, if we were tourists or on a temporary student or working visa in, say, Pakistan or Iran, and we whipped up protests against the regime, we would be deported immediately. But I'm not even focused on the free speech aspect. I'm focused on the real crimes, the trespass, the mischief, the vandalism, the uttering threats, and even the traffic violations. This dominant move, this psychology move of suddenly blocking the main intersection and praying on the street as opposed to one of the dozens of mosques in the city. Compare how those traffic violations are met with the support of the police. Compare that to how the truckers who simply honked their horns and parked in a no parking zone, how that was the cause of martial law. No violence there, no death threats, just some honking. And Justin Trudeau put the country under martial law. I've noticed something in the past couple of days. They're actually flying terrorist flags now. Not just the Palestinian flag, which someone could say is a kind of a proxy for terrorism, but the outright flags of the Hezbollah terrorist group. Those are the yellow flags with the green machine guns on them, bit of a giveaway. The media ignores those, though. They prefer the swastikas carried by white men, even if they're just set up to embarrass the truckers. They deliberately ignore these Hezbollah flags. I'm not even sure if it's legal to carry a Hezbollah flag in Canada. Here's what the criminal code says is illegal in regards to terrorism. They say participating, facilitating, instructing, and harboring terrorism. Those are all crimes. I don't know if that would expand to marching in a march with a terrorist flag. That might not be covered by it, but surely we should sweep in and check the citizen status of those people. And if they're not Canadians, we should give them the boot. Melanie Joly, who is laughably out of her league as our foreign minister, just a deep embarrassment. She signed a statement the day before Israel eliminated Hassan Nasrallah, calling for Israel not to shoot any more terrorists, completely out to lunch. Listen to this clip of her saying she thought there was a ceasefire going on. Remember this?
When I went to bed on Wednesday night, I was convinced that there was a ceasefire.
Just completely out of the loop, completely out of touch. No one important talks to her. Why would you? Imagine you're a very busy person, the Prime Minister of Israel, the President, or whoever is running the United States. Let's say you're the Prime Minister of Lebanon. You have so many people to talk to, so many things to deal with. Would you ever think, I've got to call the Foreign Minister of Canada to learn what she has to say? She reminds me of Kamala Harris in that way. Remember when Harris and Biden were asked what their message to Iran was, and they just looked at the camera and said, don't. Remember that?
What's the message to Iran?
Don't.
As President Biden said, just don't.
Exactly. One word. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't think that was quite as terrifying as when Donald Trump says, if you do that, we'll blast you back to the Stone Age. Melanie Joly was asked what she thought about this Iranian missile attack on Israel. And I say again, Israel has never attacked Iran. This was the second attack by Iran on Israel since April. Hundreds of ballistic missiles. Luckily, no one was killed. Actually, let me take that back. A poor Palestinian was killed by a piece of rocket that fell on him. She was asked about it, and Joly said, Israel should not respond. Take a look.
Is Canada's position that Israel should not respond to Iran? You've called for a ceasefire vis-a-vis Hezbollah, but this attack from Iran, is Canada asking Israel not to respond in kind?
We need to make sure that there's no escalation. Of course, Israel needs to be able to protect itself, and that's why we'll continue to support its security, and we'll support, of course, through the Iron Dome. At the same time, we need to make sure that parties sit down and the war stops, because we can see that what will happen, there will be even more further escalation, more innocent civilians, including women and children, die. And that's what I said at the UN yesterday. We need this war to stop.
She said the exact same thing back in April when most of the missiles then were shot down. She told Israel to take the win.
And we need to make sure that the conflict doesn't extend to the region. So that is why I've been clear to my counterpart in Israel, please take the win and make sure that we can work together to bring back peace in the region.
Oh, is it a win to have a foreign country fire hundreds of missiles at you? Is that take the win? Would Canada take it as a win if hundreds of missiles were shot at us? This is a woman who freaked out and called the riot police, along with Justin Trudeau, on truckers beeping their horns. And she's telling Israel to shrug off missile attacks. She said it would be an escalation for Israel to retaliate.
Is Canada taking the position that Israel should not respond to this attack by Iran?
We think that it is important that Israel be able to protect itself. It has done so over the weekend, and we are clearly pushing for de-escalation.
Yeah, I don't think anyone listens to Canada anymore. I mean, it's pretty clear that she's out of the loop.
When I went to bed on Wednesday night, I was convinced that there was a ceasefire.
But I say again, I'm more worried about what's happening here in Canada than I am in Israel. I think Israel is aware of the existential crisis it faces, and I think Israel has the means to protect itself. Frankly, I think it's been hamstrung in Gaza. But I'm worried about here at home because I don't think we have the awareness and the enlightenment to realize the pickle we're in. We're still bringing in a record number of migrants, 2 million a year, many from endemically anti-Semitic countries, countries where violence is the norm. We are becoming a terrorism and violence front line in a way we never have before. Of course, I hope Israel defeats its enemies because they're enemies of freedom and enemies of the West. And Israel goes today and the West falls tomorrow. Of course, I care about that. I've been to Israel. I'm Jewish, so I have an ethnic affinity, but I am deeply concerned about here, Canada, and what we're allowing this country to transform itself into, mainly through mass immigration, but also through a woke approach to everything from self-defense to fighting crime. I'm deeply worried about Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal and Calgary and Edmonton more than I am about Israel. Stay with us for more. Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.